One driver has kept us entertained throughout this weekend, and that driver could very well receive a seat for 2023 out of nowhere. Although Nyck de Vries was related to F1 ever since he won the F2 championship in 2019, there just hasn't been a free spot for him. However, the silly season is in its full swing, and there is a huge probability that de Vries will find himself a seat in F1 sooner rather than later. And not just any seat, but the hottest seat in the paddock too. If you want to find out more about de Vries' seat in Alpine, stick around with us until the end of this video. Nyck de Vries is currently signed as a reserve driver in Mercedes, and because of that, he has been eagerly waiting for a spot in F1. When Bottas left the team, it was more than evident that de Vries wouldn't replace him, as Russell took the seat, and so far he's performing perfectly in it. Nevertheless, de Vries has won the Formula E Championship with Mercedes in 2020-21 and is now looking to make it onto the big stage. It seems like Alpine could be de Vries' next destination, as the spot that has been left open by Alonso's departure in Aston Martin is still empty as we speak. During this weekend, de Vries received a chance to drive in F1, more precisely during a free practice session for Aston Martin. He has received those chances in the past, but during an interesting turn of events, where unfortunately Albon wasn't able to race due to appendicitis, Nyck de Vries replaced him and debuted with his first race in F1. And may we say, what a race this was! De Vries was able to score his first career points, finishing P9 and gaining 2 points in his debut for Williams. Now, if this doesn't show what kind of a qualitative driver de Vries is, nothing will. The young Dutchman has received his chance and has utilized it perfectly, but there is a problem that needs to be fixed first prior to him securing the seat in Alpine, and that is the Colton Herta situation. We were supposed to be notified prior to the Monza GP about the FIA's decision regarding Herta's super license, but the FIA hasn't said anything yet. If the governing body of the sport decides to not grant the young American the super license, then it's quite obvious that nothing of what we speak is going to happen at all. On multiple occasions, Horner said that the only driver that would replace Gasly is Herta, as the team is more than willing to sign him, even going to the extent to say that both sides have agreed and are now waiting for the FIA's decision. I think he's an exciting talent. He's a young American guy that's been a standout talent in the US, so it'll be very interesting to see how he performs in F1. And F1 is growing in popularity in the US market at the moment, and to have a successful US driver could be very interesting. It could be interesting for us in the long term. I mean, we've got contracts with our existing drivers, but AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso, they've produced a great stable of drivers for us to draw upon, whether it be Sebastian or Max or Daniel over the years. I think Pierre is doing a good job with AlphaTauri, so I don't think there will be a desire to change if there wasn't an interesting option available, said Horner. So what does this mean for the sport? It's surely unpleasant that a driver that doesn't have a super license gets so much hype just because he comes from a country that has so many fans in the uprise. No offense to Herta, he's a great guy and has shown that he can drive an F1 car, but there are much more prepared drivers than him that already have a super license and have tried out on many free practice sessions with multiple teams and are still struggling to secure a spot. That is something that was said by de Vries, who added, "I trust in the governing body. I think rules are to be respected. There are plenty of other drivers in the market that have super license points. The necessity is not necessarily that high to go and give someone dispensation to get a super license. Plus, in my own opinion, it would give an incorrect precedent and example to the Formula 2 and Formula 3 championships," said Nyck. He also spoke about the investments that are made in F3 and F2, as we all know that there are drivers that are backed up by senior F1 teams on these battlefields, and every team is trying to groom the perfect talent and find the perfect driver for the future. According to Nyck, American drivers will be much more motivated to join F3 and F2 if Herta was allowed to race there. The knock-on effect would be much greater than just giving dispensation. First, because there would be many more knocking on the door for a certain request. Secondly, you could argue that people going from Formula 4 to Formula 3 could decide to escape to the US because in Indy Lights, you only have 12 cars on the grid, and it's much easier to score points, and then you could come back. Then you almost kill and jeopardize the ladder we've been building over the years, which now is so nice. I compare our platform to what we see in MotoGP 3 and 2. There is a clear ladder, a clear path to Formula 1, so it would be a shame if we jeopardize our system, and I also think it's unnecessary, finished Nick. Nick has been linked to Williams prior to this whole thing unwinding down as it did, as it becomes evident that Latifi isn't good enough for the sport. If you lacked proof, you got it at the Monza GP, where De Vries was able to score his first 2 points in his first career race in the same machinery with Latifi. That is still a doable option, as Williams is currently still under Mercedes and De Vries could go there to build some momentum. Nevertheless, if De Vries is offered a seat in Alpine, rest assured that he won't miss it for anything in the world. However, Nick has remained realistic when it comes to his future in F1, saying that although he proved everything that he needs to prove in order to secure an F1 spot, there is a chance that he won't race in the future due to a lack of spots. I wouldn't build my future on solely hope and on the volatility of this paddock, but at the same time, it is a dream I'd like to fulfill, and I also think I deserve an opportunity. So I will be judging the opportunities carefully in the upcoming time and then, decide what is ultimately best for my career. I don't have a management, not really, or officially as such, but time will tell. I don't know, it's out of my hands. It's not in my control. Obviously, it's a dream, and I think I would deserve a chance, but ultimately, it's not up to me to decide driver lineup. Finished Nick. Apart from De Vries, there is another driver that Alpine is considering for the place, and that is their reserve driver Jack Doohan. Jack has been very good in F2, and although he didn't have a legitimate shot at the championship, we've seen that he can fight with the top dogs like Drogovic and Porsche. This has been confirmed from Alpine too, as they said that everything is in-game and Doohan could very well be on his way to Alpine, but the team prefers that the young Australian driver would have his debut elsewhere. This is why Nick is still one of the favourites for the spot, especially if the Herta deal falls off and the young American isn't granted the super license from the governing body. When talking about his future, Nick said, I mean, I don't have to sell myself. I've won certain things. I've been given the opportunity to participate in some of the FP1s. I deserve a chance. But it's not always just about what you've shown or what you've done. You need a bit of momentum. The timings need to be right. There needs to be a place. It's just purely based on what you've done in the past. Finished De Vries. With how his debut in F1 went, we're very sure that he is up there on the list when it comes to potential F1 spots. The guy managed to outperform his teammate in the first outing in Williams and scored 2 very valuable points for the team. On top of that, he was fighting the AlphaTauri of Gasly and was successfully defending against Zhou, which isn't an easy thing to do in your first race of the season. Imagine what he could do in Alpine with all of this talent. Are we right? What do you think is next for De Vries? Do you think that the Dutchman does have a spot in F1 and that spot is Alpine? Or do you think that Ericsson's suggestions in early August that De Vries would be racing alongside Albon in 2023 is now a very high possibility? Let us know in the comments below.